Lewis played it perfectly. He did exactly what he should have done. Jacques Villeneuve's words landed like a hammer blow after Baku. While Ferrari tried to brush the incident aside as a misunderstanding, the 1997 world champion saw it differently. To him, Hamilton's refusal to fully obey the order to return 8th place wasn't disobedience, it was clarity. The Canadian pointed out what Ferrari themselves didn't want to admit. With fresher tyres, Hamilton was simply faster, and the swap had been pointless from the start. That 0.4 gap at the line wasn't arrogance, it was inevitability. Villeneuve's verdict reframed the entire debate. Was this really insubordination, or was it the rational call of a driver who understood the race better than the pit wall? And if Hamilton was right, what does that say about the way Ferrari is being run from the inside? Villeneuve's defence carried weight because it cut through the noise. They didn't need to do that, he argued, pointing to the natural pace difference. On the timing screens, the numbers supported him. Hamilton's hard tyres were 9 laps younger, giving him 2 to 3 tenths per lap more grip in the middle sector. That wasn't speculation. It was visible in sector times, where Hamilton gained 0.28 seconds through the castle complex compared to Leclerc. Ferrari's intervention, in Villeneuve's eyes, was unnecessary meddling that only created tension. And this is where the controversy deepened. To most viewers, Hamilton's lift on the main straight looked like token compliance. He slowed, but not enough to let Leclerc by. Yet, in Villeneuve's framing, Hamilton wasn't being petulant, he was protecting competitive integrity. Why hand back a place that would have naturally belonged to him anyway? For Leclerc, though, the optics stung. He had obeyed when told to swap earlier, allowing Hamilton a chance to chase Tsunoda and Lawson. That gamble failed. Hamilton never breached the DRS window. And so when the call came to reverse the swap, Leclerc expected the gesture returned. Instead, he saw Hamilton cross the line 0.4 seconds ahead. His sarcastic radio, "He can enjoy that 8 pesos," wasn't about points, but principle. To Charles, fairness mattered. To Hamilton, logic did. And in Villeneuve's interpretation, logic had won. But beneath Villeneuve's endorsement lay a harsher truth for Ferrari. If the Canadian was right, then the team's authority had been undercut not by Hamilton's ego, but by their own poor judgment. Orders only work if they are credible. And in Baku, Ferrari had issued one that wasn't. Which raises the real question. When a 7-time champion decides he understands the race better than the pit wall, is that an act of rebellion? Or the moment a team loses control of its own drivers? The datasheets from Baku tell the part of the story that the cameras could not. On lap 48, Hamilton's exit speed out of turn 1 was measured at 289 km per hour, 3 faster than Leclerc's on identical deployment. Across the final 5 laps, Hamilton averaged a 0.2 advantage through sector 2, where traction and stability matter most. And on the straight, his fresher hard tyres allowed slightly earlier throttle application. To a driver with Hamilton's experience, those margins are decisive. To him, giving back 8th place was artificial, an accounting trick that ignored the fundamental truth of the race. Leclerc's numbers told another tale. His energy recovery system had been clipping earlier, leaving him short around 0.7 megajoules per lap. In practical terms, it meant he had to conserve through the braking zone at turn 3, losing him 0.15 seconds each time. Ferrari admitted it post-race, but by then the damage was done. To Charles, the team's explanation felt like another excuse for why his sacrifices never seemed to pay off. He had yielded track position, played the team role, and in return was left humiliated on global television as Hamilton refused to hand it back. This is why Villeneuve's defence mattered. His verdict wasn't just about raw pace, it was about hierarchy. He was essentially saying Hamilton's reading of the situation was more accurate than Ferrari's, and his authority to act on it was justified. But for Leclerc, that conclusion cuts deep. Because in Ferrari, perception shapes reality. If Hamilton is seen as the driver with better judgment, better instincts, and the freedom to bend instructions, then Leclerc's own standing erodes with each radio call. And that's the fracture that turned a meaningless battle for 8th into something far larger. Ferrari didn't just mismanage a swap, they revealed a power imbalance they can no longer disguise. Which forces the next uncomfortable question. Did Baku show us the beginning of a new order inside Maranello, with Hamilton as the true number 1, and Leclerc, once Ferrari's golden child sibient, slipping into reluctant support? To understand just how damaging this incident was, you need to rewind to the moment Ferrari made the call in the first place. Lap 38. Leclerc was holding 8th, Hamilton was behind on fresher hard tyres. The team believed the undercut window on Tsunoda and Lawson might still exist, but only if Hamilton was unleashed. The order came quickly. Charles let Lewis through. To Leclerc's credit, he didn't hesitate. He lifted into turn 1, giving Hamilton the chance to attack. From the pit wall, it looked like pragmatism. In reality, it was the first domino in a chain that would end in embarrassment. Hamilton pushed, but the numbers showed the flaw in Ferrari's logic. Even with the fresher rubber, he never got closer than 1.2 seconds to Lawson. And in Baku, that's an eternity. Without DRS, overtaking is next to impossible. By lap 45, the gamble had fizzled. Hamilton's tyres had heat, but no clean air. The attack mode Ferrari had promised was nothing more than a stalemate. This is where Ferrari's season-long weakness revealed itself. Strategy built on hope, not evidence. The data showed Lawson's lap times were stable in the high 1:46 seconds. Hamilton could only match, not exceed. Yet the pit wall pressed on, clinging to a scenario that wasn't materializing. And when the inevitable instruction to reverse positions came, they had boxed themselves into a no-win situation. Comply, and Hamilton looks foolish. Resist, and Leclerc feels betrayed. Either outcome carried cost. Villeneuve's verdict exposed the root issue. He wasn't just defending Hamilton. He was indicting Ferrari. Orders should clarify a race, not complicate it. Yet, in Baku, Ferrari managed to create internal drama without altering the external result. Norris, Tsunoda and Lawson all finished ahead regardless. The swap achieved nothing. What it did achieve was public evidence that Ferrari's strategic compass is spinning wildly, guided more by desperation than calculation. And if the team can't impose authority in a battle for 8th, what happens when real championship stakes are on the line? That's the question that now haunts Maranello. And it's the one Hamilton himself seems determined to test. What makes Baku sting for Ferrari is not just the lost harmony, but the comparison to how their rivals handled the same scenario. At Red Bull, team orders are absolute. When Max Verstappen is told to hold position, the instruction is respected without hesitation. At Mercedes, under Toto Wolff, the language of team play is wrapped in mutual trust. Drivers may argue, but once the order is given, it sticks. At McLaren, Andrea Stella has built authority through clarity. His drivers know the reasoning will always be transparent. That's why, when Lando Norris was asked to swap with Oscar Piastri earlier this season, it happened without drama. Ferrari, by contrast, look indecisive. Their order in Baku was neither forceful enough to command obedience, nor strategic enough to justify its existence. They asked Leclerc to move aside on hope, then asked Hamilton to give it back on principle. Both calls lacked conviction, and the drivers sensed it. The result? One obeyed reluctantly, the other complied selectively. That asymmetry exposes the core weakness of Ferrari's current management model. Authority in Formula One isn't about titles on an org chart. It's about credibility earned through sound calls under pressure. Villeneuve's sharp defense of Hamilton hammered that point home. By siding with the driver rather than the team, he validated the suspicion already circulating in the paddock. Ferrari's pit wall doesn't always deserve to be obeyed. For Leclerc, that's a devastating reality. He's built his Ferrari career on loyalty, even when strategy has failed him. But when another world champion comes in and demonstrates that defiance can be rational, Leclerc's obedience suddenly looks like weakness. This is why the Baku incident has consequences far beyond 1 point in the constructors' standings. Ferrari aren't just battling a technical gap to McLaren or Red Bull, they're battling a cultural gap in leadership. And until they prove they can give instructions that matter and enforce them consistently, every call risks being second-guessed, both by their drivers and by the world watching. The next test is coming quickly. Because when Ferrari arrive in Monza, the question won't just be about speed, it will be about control. And if Hamilton decides again that he knows better, what exactly can Ferrari do to stop him? When Fred Vasseur tried to explain the Baku incident, his words revealed more than he intended. He admitted that Leclerc had been struggling with energy recovery problems, and that Hamilton's fresher tyres offered the only realistic chance of progress. But then came the telling line. It was the best option at that moment. Not the best option for the season, not for the championship, just that moment. It was the language of a team fighting battles it no longer believes it can win. Behind closed doors, insiders have whispered the same conclusion Villeneuve made public. Ferrari is already pivoting, with McLaren commanding the standings on 623 points and Red Bull still dangerous despite internal chaos. Ferrari's 286 feels like the wrong currency in the wrong market. Their eyes are fixed not on Abu Dhabi this November, but on Melbourne in March 2026. That regulatory reset, sweeping changes to aerodynamics, power units and fuel flow, offers the one chance to redraw the grid. And history shows what that can mean. Just think back to 2009, when Brawn GP mastered the double diffuser and turned preseason doubts into a world title. For Hamilton, this shifting focus is both a frustration and an opportunity. In the short term, it leaves him stranded in midfield scraps that do nothing for his legacy. But in the long term, it gives him leverage. If Ferrari are building 2026 around him, and there are strong signals they are, then every incident like Baku becomes more than a footnote. It becomes evidence of who the Scuderia is really preparing to follow. Villeneuve's words play into this perfectly. When a former world champion defends Hamilton's defiance, it reinforces the idea that his judgment, not the pit walls, is Ferrari's true compass. For Leclerc, the message is equally stark. If 2025 is already written off, then his place in Ferrari's long-term hierarchy is in question. A sarcastic radio message after finishing 9th is one thing. But what happens when Hamilton's authority is woven into the very DNA of Ferrari's next car? And that leads to the next layer of this story. The drivers aren't just fighting for position on track. They're fighting for ownership of Ferrari's future. The most telling part of Baku wasn't the checkered flag. It was the words that followed. Leclerc's sarcasm, delivered in a tone dripping with resignation, was more revealing than any lap time. He can enjoy that 8 pesos. It's stupid. It's not fair. That wasn't a man angry about losing a point. It was a man whose patience with Ferrari's missteps has been worn down season after season. He has learned to couch frustration in irony, but the message was clear. He no longer trusts the system around him. Hamilton, by contrast, said little. His silence was as pointed as Leclerc's sarcasm. He didn't need to justify his decision because his career already does it for him. 7 titles, 90-plus victories, years of experience making split-second calls. Hamilton knows that his authority comes from his record. By lifting just enough to technically follow the order while still finishing ahead, he showed both calculation and defiance without uttering a word. It was the body language of a driver who sees himself as the final arbiter of strategy. This contrast matters. Intra-team rivalries are often decided not just by speed, but by perception. At Mercedes, Hamilton's battle with Nico Rosberg turned toxic, precisely because Rosberg's victories forced Hamilton to fight for psychological ground he once assumed was his. At Red Bull, Verstappen's total dominance has crushed any chance of such tension. But at Ferrari, the ground is contested. Leclerc once carried the mantle of team leader, the golden hope of Maranello. Now, with Hamilton in the garage, every sarcastic quip risks being read not as humour, but as weakness. Villeneuve's defence feeds directly into this psychological battle. By declaring Hamilton right, the Canadian amplified the perception that Leclerc was left playing the wrong role. And perception has a way of hardening into reality. If Hamilton is seen as Ferrari's de facto leader, both by the outside world and by the engineers who make the calls, then Leclerc's frustrations risk becoming self-fulfilling, which leaves Ferrari staring at a volatile equation. 2 elite drivers, one fading trust in the pit wall, and a championship context that no longer shields them. The question is no longer who should have had P8. It's how long Ferrari can contain a rivalry that is starting to define their entire 2025 campaign. On the surface, Baku was just another midfield finish. McLaren walked away with yet more points. Red Bull salvaged damage control, and Mercedes quietly kept themselves in the mix. Ferrari, by contrast, left with little to show, 8th and 9th, 3 points in total. But the real loss wasn't in the constructors' tally. It was in credibility. A team already struggling to match the outright pace of its rivals now looks unable to even manage its own drivers. And in Formula One, perception travels faster than any car. Look at the numbers. McLaren sit on 623 points, Mercedes on 290, Ferrari on 286. The gulf isn't just mathematical, it's cultural. McLaren's authority is absolute. Piastri and Norris fight, but always within the frame Andrea Stella defines. Red Bull, despite their off-track turbulence, still extract cohesion when it matters. Ferrari, they created internal conflict in a fight for 8th. To their rivals, that's not just weakness, it's opportunity. And the championship picture matters, even if Ferrari have privately written off 2025. Every point lost, every argument broadcast, erodes the momentum they need for 2026. Hamilton didn't come to Maranello to play number 2. He came to build a legacy, to try and succeed where even Schumacher eventually faltered, restoring Ferrari to sustained dominance. Leclerc, meanwhile, signed long-term on the belief that he was the centerpiece of that project. If Baku is any indication, only one of those visions can survive. This is why Villeneuve's commentary carries such weight. By publicly endorsing Hamilton, he reframed the narrative. This isn't about disobedience, it's about competence. And if Hamilton is the competent voice inside Ferrari, then the question becomes whether Leclerc can ever command the same respect again. For a team staring at a regulatory reset in 2026, the danger is obvious. If the drivers are fighting for authority rather than pulling in the same direction, the reset becomes a gamble, not a launch pad. Which leads us to the final looming dilemma. Ferrari can survive technical gaps. They can even survive strategic errors. What they cannot survive is division, at the very moment unity is needed most. And Baku may have shown that division is already here. In the end, Baku will not be remembered for the finishing order. It will be remembered for the symbolism. A 4/10 gap on the line exposed something deeper than strategy gone wrong. It revealed Ferrari's hierarchy in flux. Villeneuve's voice gave that symbolism weight. By siding with Hamilton, he legitimized what many suspected. Ferrari's veteran may already be dictating terms, not just following them. This isn't unprecedented. Great champions often bend teams around them. Schumacher reshaped Ferrari in the early 2000s. Alonso tried to do the same at Renault and McLaren, and Verstappen today operates with Red Bull fully tuned to his instincts. What's unusual here is that Ferrari already had a leader in Leclerc, or at least thought they did. Baku showed how fragile that position has become. The danger for Ferrari is twofold. First, they risk losing harmony in the short term, sacrificing points in a season where everyone still matters for pride, prize money, and momentum. Second, and more importantly, they risk entering 2026 divided. The new regulations are a blank slate. To exploit them, a team needs total alignment, drivers, engineers, management pulling in one direction. If Hamilton and Leclerc are still fighting for psychological territory, Ferrari may waste their best chance in a generation. Villeneuve ended his analysis with a note of optimism, that Ferrari should already be thinking of 2026, not chasing the scraps of 2025. He's right in principle. But the irony is that unless they solve the internal fractures exposed in Baku, the reset may only magnify their problems. Regulations change the cars, they do not change human dynamics. And in Formula One, unity wins titles as surely as horsepower, which brings us back to the original question. Was Hamilton right to resist? If you believe Villeneuve, the answer is yes. But if you believe Ferrari must enforce authority to have any hope in 2026, then Hamilton's 4/10 may have cost more than a single place. It may have cost Ferrari their last ounce of control. Baku was a microcosm of Ferrari's season. Strategy misfires, fragile authority, and drivers caught in contradictions. Villeneuve's defense of Hamilton reframed what looked like disobedience into something more significant, a rational decision by a driver who trusted his instincts over the pit wall. The numbers back him. 9-lap fresher tyres, 0.2 per lap quicker through the castle, Leclerc's ERS clipping at 0.7 megajoules per lap. The evidence showed Hamilton had the pace to stay ahead. The real mistake was Ferrari's, creating orders they could not justify or enforce. But the fallout goes beyond Azerbaijan. Every sarcastic radio from Leclerc, every silence from Hamilton chips away at Ferrari's cohesion. If Hamilton is already establishing himself as the de facto leader, Ferrari's long-term gamble on 2026 may be built around him, not their monegasque star. Villeneuve's analysis only sharpened that perception. Ferrari are not just fighting for results now, they're fighting to decide whose vision defines their future. So where does that leave Ferrari? Was Hamilton right to resist? A champion exercising sound judgment in the face of flawed orders? Or does allowing drivers to redefine instructions on the fly spell disaster for a team already adrift? In other words, is Hamilton Ferrari's best hope of renewal, or the reason Leclerc will never lead them again?